A group tried to intimidate a war hero until one call turned the tables on them completely. Before we dive into this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel. Your subscription means everything to us and is the only way to ensure that stories like these, stories of courage, resilience, and the human spirit, reach more people. Your support helps us continue our mission, so please hit that subscribe button now. In a dimly lit diner on the edge of town, the air was thick with tension. A group of men loomed over a single figure sitting alone in the corner. Their laughter echoed, but it was laced with malice, each word sharper than the last. Across the table, a war hero named Jack sat, his eyes reflecting a storm of memories, of battles fought and friends lost. The weight of his past clung to him like a heavy cloak, and yet he remained calm, his hands steady despite the threats being thrown his way. Outside, a storm brewed, mirroring the chaos within. With each passing moment, it became clear that something had to give, that the balance between fear and bravery was about to tip. Just then, an unexpected phone call shattered the silence, and everything was about to change. As the phone rang, the group of men paused, their laughter dwindling into a tense silence. Jack's heart raced. He knew this call could change everything. He reached for his phone, glancing at the caller ID. It was a number he hadn't seen in years, one that belonged to his former commander, Colonel Harris. With a swift motion, he answered, his voice steady despite the whirlwind surrounding him. "Jack, I just heard what they're trying to do to you." Colonel Harris's voice boomed from the other end, filled with urgency. "You need to know that you're not alone in this fight." The words hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of intimidation. Jack felt a surge of hope, a flicker of resilience igniting within him. He glanced at the group, their expressions shifting from cockiness to confusion as they realized the tide was turning. "What do you mean?" Jack replied, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. "I've rallied the troops, Jack. Veterans from all corners of the country are on their way. We won't let them push you around. Not now, not ever," Colonel Harris declared. At that moment, the atmosphere in the diner shifted palpably. The men surrounding Jack exchanged uneasy glances. They had thought they could easily intimidate a solitary veteran, but now the stakes were rising. One of the men, a burly figure with tattoos snaking up his arms, leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "You really think a few old soldiers can help you? This isn't the battlefield anymore, Marine." Jack, feeling emboldened by his commander's words, met the man's gaze with unwavering determination. "You underestimate the strength of brotherhood. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the spirit." As the tension thickened, the diner's door swung open, and a gust of wind swept in, carrying with it the promise of change. In the distance, the rumble of engines could be heard, growing louder with each passing second. The group of men shifted uneasily, their bravado wavering. Outside, a convoy of vehicles pulled up, and veterans began to spill out, their faces weathered but resolute. They wore jackets emblazoned with their units, badges of honor that told stories of courage and sacrifice. Jack's heart swelled as he recognized familiar faces, each one a testament to the bond they shared. "See," Jack said, his voice rising above the din of uncertainty, "you messed with the wrong man." The group of men, which had once seemed so imposing, now looked like a pack of cornered animals, their bravado evaporating before the sheer force of unity. The veterans stepped into the diner, their presence commanding respect and admiration. They exchanged nods of solidarity with Jack, a silent promise to stand by him in the fight ahead. As the tension escalated, the diner's atmosphere transformed. Shopkeepers outside paused to witness the unfolding drama, their eyes wide with disbelief. Children, clutching their parents' hands, whispered amongst themselves, "What's happening? Who are they?" The weight of history hung in the air, each veteran a living reminder of the sacrifices made for freedom. Some onlookers wondered if they were there to protect Jack, or if they were there to reclaim a sense of justice. Others simply felt the electricity of the moment, a palpable sense of rightness in a world that often felt upside down. The burly man who had taunted Jack earlier now took a step back, his bravado crumbling. "You're just a bunch of has-beens," he spat. But there was a tremor in his voice that betrayed his fear. Jack stood tall, flanked by his brothers in arms, the weight of their shared experiences creating an unbreakable shield around him. We may be has-beens, but we know what it means to fight for what's right, and we won't back down. Just then, the diner's door swung open again, and another wave of veterans poured in, their faces set with determination. They had come from different walks of life, each with their own story, but united by a single purpose: to stand with Jack against the corrupt forces threatening their community. As the group of intimidators began to realize they were outnumbered, a palpable shift occurred. The murmurs of the crowd outside grew louder, the whispers of support echoing through the diner. Who are they? People began to ask, an air of admiration building around the veterans. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. The words flowed naturally, a call to action that resonated with the growing audience, both in the diner and beyond. The tension in the diner reached a boiling point. Jack felt the collective energy of his comrades, the unwavering bond forged through shared struggles. The veterans stood shoulder to shoulder, each man a pillar of strength, ready to face whatever came next. "Let's show them what brotherhood looks like," Jack said, his voice rising above the chaos. The group of men who had tried to intimidate him now looked small and insignificant in the wake of such unity. Suddenly, the diner's lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, as if the very spirits of those who had fought for their country were joining the fight. The storm outside raged on, mirroring the tempest within, but inside the diner, a new resolve had taken root. As the opposing group shuffled back, a sense of camaraderie blossomed among the veterans. They shared stories, laughter, and a renewed sense of purpose. The diner, once a place of intimidation, had transformed into a sanctuary of strength and resolve. Jack took a deep breath, the weight of his past still present but now overshadowed by the promise of the future. He realized that this was more than just a battle for land. It was a fight for dignity, for respectii, and for the community that had stood by him. And with his brothers beside him, he knew they would not falter. The showdown was just beginning, and the world outside buzzed with anticipation. The corrupt officials had no idea what was coming their way. The tide had turned, and the veterans were ready to reclaim their honor and protect what was rightfully theirs. As the atmosphere in the diner thickened with tension, the group of veterans stood resolute, united behind Jack. The once imposing figures of the would-be intimidators shrank under the weight of the growing crowd. Yet, just as victory seemed within grasp, a surprising revelation emerged, one that would shake the very foundation of their confrontation. Colonel Harris, still on the line, continued to rally the troops. "Jack, stay strong. We're just outside, and we have more than just veterans with us. You'll never guess who's leading the charge." Jack felt his heart race. "Who?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "Your sister, Rachel. She's been organizing protests against those corrupt officials for months. She gathered a coalition of community leaders, and they're right behind us," Colonel Harris revealed, his voice filled with pride. Jack's mind raced. Rachel, the quiet force in his life, had always been his anchor, but he hadn't realized the extent of her involvement. The thought of her risking everything to stand up for him filled him with both admiration and concern. He had always wanted to protect her, but now she was out there, fighting alongside the very people he had fought with. As the realization washed over him, the burly man with tattoos scoffed. "What's a few old soldiers and some community leaders going to do? You think that'll intimidate us?" But Jack was no longer just defending himself. He was defending his family, his sister. "You have no idea what you're up against," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "This isn't just about me. It's about all of us standing together against those who abuse their power." The door swung open once more, and Rachel entered, flanked by a group of passionate community members. They carried signs that read, "Stand with our heroes and protect our community." The energy in the diner shifted again, now infused with her determination and the palpable sense of justice that radiated from the group. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he locked eyes with Rachel. She smiled at him, a beacon of hope amid the turmoil. "I couldn't let you do this alone, Eli," she said, her voice strong and unyielding. We're a family and we fight for each other. The group of intimidators, once so brazen, now faltered. The burly man exchanged worried glances with his companions, realizing they had underestimated the bond that tied Jack to his sister and the community. But just when it seemed like victory was within reach, another twist unfolded. From the back of the diner, an older man emerged, his gait slow but steady. He wore a faded military jacket, the insignia worn and frayed. The crowd parted, and Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. "Dad," he gasped, the word escaping his lips like a prayer. Jack's father, a veteran himself, had been estranged from the family for years. The weight of their unresolved issues hung heavy in the air. But in this moment, all that mattered was the unity they needed to fight back. "I heard you were in trouble, son," his father said, his voice rough but filled with warmth. "No one messes with my boy." Jack felt an emotional wave crash over him. Years of resentment and hurt began to dissolve in the face of their shared purpose. "I didn't know if you'd come," Jack admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "Family sticks together," his father replied, stepping forward to stand beside Rachel. "And it's time we showed these thugs what loyalty really means." The atmosphere in the diner shifted yet again. The group of intimidators, now facing a united front of veterans, community leaders, and family, began to realize they were outmatched. The crowd outside pressed closer, their curiosity transformed into solidarity. As the storm raged outside, the diner became a fortress of strength. Each person present was a living testament to resilience, their shared history rippling through the air like electricity. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a fight for land. It was a battle for honor, integrity, and the bonds that could never be broken. "Are you ready to fight for what's right?" Jack called out, his voice echoing through the diner. The veterans responded with a roar of affirmation, their spirits ignited by the presence of family and community. With that, the tide turned decisively. The intimidators, once filled with bravado, now stood bewildered. They had expected fear and division, but instead found a coalition built on love and loyalty. Jack's heart raced as he realized the true power of unity, an unbreakable force that could withstand any storm. As the crowd outside grew louder, the realization hit Jack with full force. This fight was no longer just about him. It was about everyone who had ever felt powerless against corruption. It was about reclaiming their community and ensuring that their voices would be heard. Jack's father placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're with you, son. We've got your back," he said, his eyes filled with a fierce pride. The group of intimidators, sensing their impending defeat, began to retreat. "You think this is over? We'll be back," the burly man shouted. But his voice lacked conviction. Jack stood tall, unwavering, and replied, "You might try, but we'll always be ready. You can't intimidate what you can't control." As the group of veterans, community leaders, and family members rallied together, the storm outside began to fade. The clouds parted, revealing a glimmer of sunlight, the first sign of hope breaking through the darkness. In that moment, Jack knew they had turned the tide. They had transformed intimidation into empowerment, fear into courage, and division into unity. As the diner filled with the sound of laughter, stories, and camaraderie, the world outside buzzed with anticipation. The corrupt officials had no idea what was coming for them. The battle had just begun, but Jack and his newfound allies were ready to reclaim their honor, their community, and their future. As the last remnants of the storm faded, the tension in the diner melted into a powerful camaraderie. Jack stood at the center of it all, surrounded by his sister Rachel, his father, and his fellow veterans. The air buzzed with a mix of adrenaline and relief, a palpable energy that signified a turning point not just for Jack, but for the entire community. The group of intimidators, once so confident, now huddled together, casting furtive glances at the growing crowd outside. They had come to assert their power, but what they found was an unyielding spirit that had risen from the ashes of fear. Jack's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "This is what happens when you underestimate the heart of a community. We stand together, and we will not be silenced." As murmurs spread through the diner, those gathered began to chant, "Together we stand, together we fight." The sound reverberated off the walls, echoing the resilience and determination that had taken root. The community had found its voice, and it was a voice that demanded respect. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he looked around at the faces of those who had come to support him. Veterans, community leaders, and family members stood united, a formidable force against the corruption that had plagued their town for far too long. It was a moment that would be etched in their memories, a moment of triumph over adversity. Outside, the crowd continued to swell, drawn by the electricity in the air. News reporters arrived, cameras rolling, eager to capture the unfolding story. The narrative was shifting from one of intimidation to one of empowerment, and Jack was determined to ensure that the truth would be told. "Let's show the world what we're made of," Jack called out, rallying the group. "We're not just fighting for our land, we're fighting for every person who has ever felt powerless. This is about justice." Just then, Colonel Harris stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Jack, this is bigger than just your story. It's about all of us. We've fought for our country, and now we fight for our home. Let's stand together and make our voices heard." The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits soaring. Jack felt a surge of energy as the veterans began to share their own stories, recounting battles fought and won, both in war and in life. The diner transformed into a sanctuary of strength, where every word spoken was a testament to the power of unity. As the intimidators realized they were outmatched, their bravado crumbled further. The burly man who had once taunted Jack now stood pale, his bravado replaced by fear. "You think you can take us down?" he spat, but his voice trembled, betraying his uncertainty. Jack stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "You've underestimated not just me, but every person in this room. We will not allow you to bully us any longer. We will fight back, not just for ourselves, but for our community." With that declaration, the crowd surged forward, a wave of solidarity that washed over the intimidators. They stumbled back, realizing that their time was up. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably, and they were left in the dust of their own arrogance. As the news spread, the community rallied around Jack, organizing peaceful protests and town hall meetings to address the corruption that had seeped into their local government. Jack found himself at the forefront of this movement, not just as a war hero, but as a leader who had inspired others to rise up and demand change. Days turned into weeks, and the momentum grew. The intimidators, now facing legal repercussions for their actions, began to retreat. The community had taken a stand, and the support for Jack and his cause only intensified. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #Stand with Jack and nurturing community strength, amplifying their message far beyond their small town. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stood on the steps of the town hall, addressing a crowd that had gathered to celebrate their victories. The atmosphere was electric, filled with hope and determination. "We have shown that when we stand together, we are unstoppable," he proclaimed, his heart full. "This is just the beginning. We will continue to fight for what is right, for each other, and for a future where our voices are always heard." The crowd erupted in applause, and Jack felt a swell of gratitude for the support that had surrounded him. He had discovered not just the strength of brotherhood, but the unbreakable bond of community. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. As the night sky twinkled with stars, Jack took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had gone from being a target of intimidation to a symbol of resilience and hope. And while the battles ahead would not always be easy, he knew that with the love and support of his family, friends, and fellow veterans, they could face anything together. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. Your support helps us share tales of courage, unity, and the incredible power of the human spirit. Let's keep this momentum going. Together, we can inspire change, one story at a time.